Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Neuroalchemy, a NeuroSynergy podcast where science meets soul and where healing is understood as nonlinear, multidimensional journey of becoming. I'm your host, Dr. Sarah Young. And before we begin, I want to ground us in one of the core principles of this space. Here on Neuroalchemy, we define every term as if you're hearing it for the very first time because clarity creates safety, and safety opens the door to more healing opportunities. This is not a performative space. It's not about fixing, hustling, or pushing through. It's a space where lived experience is honored, language is slowed down, and healing is allowed to unfold at the pace of the nervous system. Today, I'm so grateful to introduce you all to Ash Mars. Ash is the founder of Soul Release Method, a trauma informed, somatic, and energetic practice that supports high performing, spiritually aware individuals in moving from survival mode into genuine ease, flow, and fulfillment. Ash, before we dive in, I would love to do a gentle arrival check in. How are you arriving into this conversation today in your body, in your nervous system, in the moment?
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm doing just a little body scan right here in this moment, and I feel present with the bottoms of my feet, which is not always the case, but I feel in the moment and really rested in my root chakra and my hips, and really excited to just be here and be present with you. Thank you for the introduction.
I love that, Ash, and thank you so much for that detail. It's a really beautiful reminder,
Yeah.
right? That we all have the opportunity at any time to do that scan within our body and see how we're feeling
Mhm.
within our space. Before we move further, I'd love for us to define a few terms together, just in everyday language, so listeners feel oriented and included. Ash, I may invite you to define these as we go, but there's no right way to do it. So
Mhm.
let's just start with a few foundations. When you say nervous system safety, what does that
Yeah.
actually mean in lived human terms?
Yeah. I think a lot of times we discuss healing and mental health and neuroscience through this very sciencey lens, right? All of the studies, all of the things. And what is actually happening in our bodies when we have nervous system safety is a presence and a calm of the moment. And it's been a shift from monitoring, like looking for threats. And so when we're in activation, when we're in a state of anxiety or depression, or those might be terms that have been put on us or that we're like, maybe this describes me. Oftentimes what we're looking for in our environment is what's going to come for me next. Where is there a lack of safety in my environment? And when we have nervous system safety, it's rooted in I am safe, I am here, I am now. And what comes around me, I'm capable of handling. I can problem solve. I have trust in my own abilities. I have a sense of confidence and just like inner knowing that whatever happens, happens, and I got this.
That is such a beautiful description, and I'm sure there's a lot of people out there listening that are thinking, "That sounds so lovely," especially in this fast-paced world we live in where
Yeah.
everything has gotta be done yesterday,
Yes.
and you can't get it all done, and just feeling like this moment is okay the way it is, which is
Yeah.
absolutely true, but it
Yeah.
doesn't feel that way.
Yeah. And it goes into a very different definition of trauma, right? Because my definition of trauma is from somatics and the body awareness element, which is too much, too fast, too soon. And that can be as much as I drove to work today and there was somebody riding on my tail and I was focused on what I needed to do when I was at work and there was all this stimulation coming to me. That is a minor trauma. We don't give ourselves time to process and to finish the processing of that. And then it can be big key traumas. It can be those big one-off things that cause us to have significant challenges. But we don't talk enough about the day to day and the ability to complete the stress cycle on those day to day elements, small things.
When you use the word somatic, how would you explain that to someone who's
Yeah.
never heard it before?
I know, right? It's a weird word and it's such a sciencey word that doesn't why are we not just saying mind body? It's like mind body connection, it's body awareness. And the way that I work through the soul release method and what has really helped me, and so this is why I share it from that lens, is body first, right? So coming from body awareness up to the brain understanding and the ability to speak it instead of let me fill my brain with knowledge and let me have this discussion and then trying to like my opinion, this is not how it happens for everybody, but in my opinion, like force that down into the body and say like, well, this should be true for me. This is how I should be feeling. I've read all of this research. I've done the personal work in the study. And so my approach is very much more of like body up as opposed to mind down.
It's so beautiful. You talk about survival mode. How does someone know when they're living from that place?
I can't speak for everybody. So I'll speak from my own experience. I think survival mode shows up for me. It's a feeling of not being safe. And that can be as minor as yesterday, I had someone tell me that they like didn't want to be my friend. And so it was like, oh, that makes me feel unsafe because I have a relationship that had some sort of breakdown. But it can also be safety mode of can I put food on the table? We have these basic needs. And we can talk about this, Maslow's hierarchy, yada, yada, yada. But like we have the basic needs of like food and shelter and connection. And when those basic needs are met, there is oftentimes, oh, I'm going to ramble. What do I want to say?
There's nothing wrong that you could
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
If your soul feels like the things to say feel like rambling, girl, that is totally okay in this space.
Oh, thank you for the permission. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think that ask me your question again and let me focus it.
So we're just talking about survival mode and
Survival mode. Yeah.
how someone might know or become aware that
Yeah.
they're
Great.
actually living from that place.
So let me give you this as an example. Most of us have our basic needs met. We have food on the table. We have a roof over our head. There are folks that that's not the case. And that is true survival mode. But oftentimes our bodies get triggered and we are in survival mode like we're living on the plains and have a wild animal and a wild beast coming after us. So person that honks their horn at me when I'm in traffic, my body can go into this, that's like a lion chasing me on the Sahara. And that's when we're in that survival mode. And when we recognize and start to say like, okay, actually there's safety rooted around me and the horn behind me is just a little like blip on the radar. That's the shift away from survival mode. Yeah, that's I think what I want to say.
So, another way to think about it too is like survival mode is when your nervous system is kind of programmed
Yeah.
to treat things might even be benign, right?
Yes.
As a threat, which
Yes.
results in, our brain and our organs and glands to release neurochemicals, and hormones that kind of jack everything up and make you feel like, oh my
Exactly.
gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And that was useful. And I guess in some very rare cases in modern day, it could be, right? If there's a
Yeah.
killer coming after you. But the
Mm-hmm.
problem is that our nervous systems don't always know the difference
Doesn't
between
have.
somebody just hit their brake in front of me. Your nervous system is acting the same in that scenario, like you were describing, Ash, as it would be in the other scenario you were describing, which is like there's a lion coming after me or something like that. And so when we live in that perpetual state of being flooded with those stress hormones,
Mm-hmm.
on the mind body connection, the way we experience life level, we call that survival mode. And finally, when you say soul led living, what does that feel like rather than what does it sound like?
Yeah. So soul led living is that mind body spirit connection. And when I was describing the somatics of it coming from internal to me, the way that I experience it and the way that I support folks to access it is this body connection that is the nervous system and the nervous system connected to our energy systems. And however that is real for whoever is listening to this, if it's auric fields or quantum, all of that is perfect. And that building an awareness in that space of what's coming from this deep internal place for me. And how do I bring more of that authenticity, that sense of truth and inner creativity into the way I feel in my body, which then informs the actions I take, which then informs the words that I say. And then the world around me transitions, not because I have projected it, but because it's coming from this internal connection. And that can be soul led living.
It reminds me of a meme I saw on Facebook today, and it says, the amount of good things in your life is directly related to the ones that you notice, or something
Mm,
like that. And
yeah.
that's very in spirit with what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yep.
we can choose into that. We can look for that.
Exactly.
Your work is deeply rooted in your own lived experience.
Yeah.
You've shared with me that your healing journey began after a series of life altering moments, an
Yeah.
emergency C section, a divorce, and leaving a career that looked perfect on paper. I'd
Yeah.
love for you to take us into that chapter, not just what happened externally, but
Mhm.
what began shifting internally in your body, your identity, and your sense of safety? What did your nervous system learn during
Mhm.
that time?
I think one of the biggest moments of learning for me was the choice to leave my professional job. I was doing administrative work. I'd worked for 7 years in this one job to get to this rank and to have a title and to earn a certain amount of money and to like get what I thought would make it feel like I had arrived, that I had figured it out, that other people finally saw me for who I was. And I got to that moment and nothing clicked, nothing changed. And it was kind of like the buildup of a party coming, and then it was just this sizzle. So like, like nobody cares, right? And that was the first indicator. Those were the small signs. And at first I internalized it. I told myself like, "Oh, this is just my anxious avoidance attachment. This is just me like not being satisfied with my life. There's something wrong. If I just stick with it, eventually this will feel right. Eventually this will feel satisfying." And I tried. I kept trying. And when I told myself these stories of, you worked so hard to get here, right? You put in 7 years of work plus 4 years of an education plus sacrificing so many things in your personal life to get to this moment. And how dare you not be grateful for it, right? But no amount of gratitude made it none of it made it feel settled inside of myself. And so I continued to do the work, and it started to sour inside of me. And there were these signs that I was overworking, overhelping, working 80-hour weeks, so very stressed out, not having my cup filled, and it started to turn into anger. And I had made a commitment to myself when I was student teaching that I was not going to stay in teaching and education once it made me angry, because in my pre-service teaching, it was my mentor teacher had essentially become a functional alcoholic. And we had these conversations where she was like, my alcohol bill is higher than my rent. And I asked her these questions of like, why do you continue to do this work if that's how you feel about it? And she was like, well, I'm so close to retirement. She had moved so far away from her why and her purpose, from her desire to help kids. And she was just going through the motions. And so I knew as I started to feel those signs of anger that that pathway was going to lead me in that direction if I didn't change and I didn't do something different. So the work that I was doing was very heavily mental, right? We're in the education system. It was a lot of teaching other folks. And I started to get really curious about, when I am leading leadership work and leadership training for people, some people leave transformed and some people leave just kind of like, oh, this was just an hour in their day. And what's the difference? And that's what led me to the somatics. That's what led me to this mind body connection and the science that we now have around the nervous system and the things that we can measure that are no longer right. It's demystifying this whole body of knowledge that has been in our society for thousands of years. And that, going through that to try and support the job that I was doing and try to maintain it, was actually me applying it to myself and being like, yeah, you know what? I'm actually ready to go. I can actually leave this and leave it satisfied that I did as much as I could. I grew as much as I needed to, and we can part ways in peace.
Many of our listeners are high functioning, capable, and deeply self aware, yet they still feel like they're bracing for life instead of living it.
Yeah.
Ash, how do you help people recognize the difference between coping functioning, achieving, and actually feeling safe enough to receive rest and
Mm. The simple answer is internal connection, right? The very smallest point and moment of that is the felt sense of yes in our bodies. It has been so silent for so many of us. I have a 1-year-old right now, and um, it's so good. It's so good to watch a baby and to be like, "Oh, this is what I was like when I was baby," or, "Oh my gosh, all of the projections that I have onto this child who just like it was just a clean slate." It's fantastic. But what a lot of us experienced, even very young, was it was so soft and it was so minor, and it was from such a good place of intention from our parents of, it's not a big deal. Baby right now is going through object permanence, right? The like, oh, things go away and then they disappear, or I finished my snack and it's done and there's no more snack, and it's a huge deal, right? A blow up of, gosh, there'll never be more snacks ever again. Oh my goodness. And the first response tends to be like, "It's okay. It's not a big deal. You're gonna be okay." And as an adult, it's true. I know some people fine. They're not starving to death. They're totally good. But for them, it's the biggest deal that's ever happened to them. And so when I say those things to them, when I try to say it, to explain it away or to just tell them to be calm, it's really saying like your feeling inside of your body is not okay. And it's not true. And it comes from good intention. It comes from a grander knowing than they have, but it doesn't actually help them to process or to understand. And so many of us have that experience. And when we have all of these small moments of being told to silence ourselves, being told that our feelings are not valid, or that everything in the end is going to be okay, and to just ignore it, start to turn that off. And we no longer can feel our sense of, yes, this is what's right for me, or our no of like, this isn't really where I should be. And we follow what the outside is telling us we should be doing. Reconnection with that is the pathway that I use.
Ash, don't you think the world would be so vastly different if we started like with the babies, teaching humans from a very young age and supporting that mind body connection, right?
Yeah.
I
But it's
mean, this would
hard,
be a
girl. And
totally different
yeah.
world, girl.
Yeah, but it's so hard because baby cries and then my nervous system is all upset and I just want them to be calm again, so whatever it can do. And so it's so much about me understanding self and being able to be present, and being able to be regulated and coming down to be with them. And what I think we overcomplicate it, because it really is just about being present with this other human being. In psychology, we talk about it as attunement, and it's just like, can I attune to where you are? Instead of telling you you're fine and suppressing, I'm just here. I'm just here with you. I can feel it and I can be in it with you. And that's really and truly, honestly, usually enough. And to your point in the way you started your podcast, it's about being together here with you and me, knowing that there's an audience that will be here with us in the virtual, and that we're also just here together.
And there's a oneness in that, right?
Mm, mm,
All really interconnected. We're one,
yeah.
big web, all connected on the same web.
Mhm.
We might not
Yes.
always be aware of how to reach each other on there, but
Yeah.
we're definitely all connected. We're all
Yes.
part of each other.
Yes.
One of the things I deeply appreciate about your work is how you bridge nervous system regulation, somatic awareness, and spiritual embodiment without
Mhm.
bypassing the body or rushing transformation. Can
Yeah.
you share how true change happens
Mhm.
when the body is included instead of overridden, and why insight alone isn't enough to create lasting change?
Yeah. Yeah. I shared a little bit in the beginning of, a lot of times we educate ourselves. We fill our brain, and that then we then try to like be like, and this is what is true. I've put it into my brain. I am going to force it into my existence. And when we come from an internal and we come from the nervous system, it really transforms pieces. What I would say is it also tends to be very subtle. So I'll speak from my experience because my story is the only one that I can share, right, with true authenticity. There are times when I don't actually realize things have happened until it's 6 months later. And I'm like, oh, I'm having thoughts I haven't had in 6 months. That's really weird. The realization that like something shifted for me that I stopped thinking that way. I have really and truly changed. A specific example of this is when I was doing some intense trauma therapy with a process called EMDR. And if folks aren't aware, EMDR is stimulation of both sides of the brain to kind of rewire and support moving through like big T trauma events. And I was doing this EMDR and I was like, this isn't really doing anything. Like this is a bunch of hokey, like whatever. I'm just gonna go to my sessions and whatever. And then all of a sudden my behavior started to change. And the thing that I had been so afraid of doing, which had brought me to therapy, I was like, oh, I'm just doing it now. I didn't even think about it. And that's the moment that I didn't have to tell myself, I didn't have to should on myself. It was internal and life just shifted.
You speak beautifully about receiving abundance without burnout. This can be challenging for people whose nervous systems learned that worth equals effort.
Hmm.
Ash, what does it actually take for the body to feel safe receiving, whether that's rest, love, success, or ease?
Yeah.
And what gets in the way for so many people?
Ooh, that's a big question. I don't know if I can solve this question for everybody. I really love, I'm not going to remember the author's name, but there's a book called Rest is an Act of Rebellion. And that changed things for me. The woman who wrote it runs the NAP ministry, which she just goes into communities that have experienced generational stress. And she provides spaces that are for nap, for rest together, communal rest. And I think that is the transformation of rest is not something I have to earn. Rest is not something that I do to withdraw from the world, but actually rest is generative and rest is the foundation that from this rested nervous system, from a sense of safety, I then can move forward. That's the belief system right there. The feeling of it in the body, I think for a lot of us in this time and in this place, that might be the journey of a lifetime connecting with that. And the ability to have rest is then what opens up the ability to receive. I don't know if it's hierarchical or foundational, but there is an element of if I'm always in my doing mode and in my action oriented, acting from needing to create safety for myself, it's really hard for somebody to support or to come alongside me. And if we have a greater sense of ease inside of our bodies and we see the opportunities of when I'm doing something, how do I bring my expertise and invite other people to bring their expertise? And I don't have to do it on my own. I don't have to be this rugged individual that owns everything and does everything. That has certainly been the story and a journey of learning in my lifetime. So, yeah, I feel like I left that very, very general, but that I think is the best answer I can give you in this moment.
Well, Ash, I think you gave a perfect answer, if you want my opinion, but you also support people navigating big life transitions. How
Yeah.
does nervous system safety support boundary setting, self trust, and honoring timing, especially when old patterns want to rush or override intuition?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Going back to the story I was sharing about my job and being able to leave with peace and with grace. I have left jobs in a panic. I have been like, oh, I've been here for 9 hours and this isn't the right place for me and I'm quitting this job. Like that has happened. And I think about the way that that occurred for me and the scatteredness of my energy, the scatteredness of my mind, all of that. When we're settled in the nervous system, when we're connected with our own intuition, leaving with that peace and that grace, it feels like being just in deep alignment with my ethics and my values and the relationships that I was able to maintain and to keep, right? I'm still friends with my boss. I'm still friends with old coworkers. And I didn't have to blow it up in order to move away. And I'm watching a lot right now, and I have felt it before as well, of in order to change, sometimes we feel like there has to be a villain in the story. that, it had to be my boss was a bad person and I have to villainize them. Or in order to get a divorce from my spouse, they had to have been an abuser in order for me to step away. And for me, it was this realization from this internal place of like, it can just be a time for it to be done. It can be that it happened for a season and it was beautiful and amazing while it lasted, but it's okay to step away. It's okay to harvest the fruit from that and to recognize that there's other pastures that I need to be on. But it's not easy. It's not easy when we live in a world that it's us and them and villains and heroes, and we don't live in a black and white place. We live in a very full color location. There we go.
I'm
I
still
think I
here. I
covered
want I
it.
wanted to find something because
Okay.
when you said that, when you said what you just said, it reminded me of a quote I saw on Facebook today. I'm going to share it.
Yeah,
It's
please.
from Kate Forster, and what she said was, "I think it's a deep consolation to know that spiders dream, that monkeys tease predators, that dolphins have accents, that lions can be scared silly by a lone mongoose, and that otters hold hands, and ants bury their dead. That there isn't their life and our life, nor your life and my life, that it's just one teetering and endless thread, and all of us are entangled with it as deep as entanglement goes."
I love that. That's given me chills all the way down my spine. So good. It's so good.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for reminding me. What you said just reminded me to share that.
Yeah.
Ash, at the end of each neuroalchemy conversation, we offer listeners a gentle invitation. It's
Hmm.
not a task, it's not homework, it's just something simple, embodied, and accessible. Do you have a small practice or reflection you'd like to invite listeners into for this week? Something that supports safety, presence, or release without forcing change. And we like to recommend for them to just try it out every day over the next week and see how things shift for them. What do
Yeah.
you recommend?
The one I'm using right now is it's always breath. Breath is the greatest tool that you can have, and it's with you all the time. And you don't need to buy anything. You don't have to do anything. Use the breath. And the one I'm using right now is a breath where you go like a snake. So you breathe out and you go with your mouth. And what that does, so if you just take those 3 deep breaths with that, what's happening in the body is it's automatically connecting you with your root. And so instead of needing to mentally focus on how deep my breath is going, your body is activating your transverse abdominis and you're connecting with that bowl of the hip, that root chakra, and that space. And the reason I'm using it in this moment is that real embodied living needs to be throughout the entire body. And a lot of the work that I've been doing, and if for folks that might be resonating with this in this time and this place, is it's been so very mental. And maybe it's been heart space focused, or maybe it's been kind of like power focused, but really connecting with the earth that you were talking about, this greater web, is the connection with that root chakra. And that breath gives us a very simple tool to connect right there.
Can you describe that again? Like when I was trying to follow what you meant,
Yeah.
I don't think I would be able to reproduce it. Can you describe it again? Are you breathing stacked breaths through your nose, like sniff, 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 and then out the lips?
No, just a deep breath in. And then when you exhale, making it sound like a snake, which I don't know if the mic is picking up or not. It might be editing out.
That's it. Okay, so it's the S sound, like
It's
the
the S sound,
snake
like a
sound.
little silly snake going. We'll see if that picks up on the mic. Yeah, but
That
just that
just
exhale with
that
that.
continuous S sound. So
Mm-hmm.
taking a deep breath in
Yeah,
and practicing that. I tried to make it
exactly.
really loud, but the mic may not have picked it up,
I was
but
hearing
it's
yours, but it doesn't
oh,
look like it's
good.
picking up mine.
I was really loudly doing that, S sound. It's that speech language pathologist in me, I
Nice.
suppose. How long do you recommend they practice this for each day? What's a nice bite-sized trial
I
amount?
think as simple as one breath is fine. 3 breaths, excellent. And that's really it. What I use it as a practice for is any moment where I find myself being scattered. If my mind is going lots of places, it's going to bring me right back into that core and into that rooting into this moment.
That's a super nice tool. Thank you so much for sharing that. All of you out there, please take that opportunity and just try that throughout the week. When you notice yourself feeling scattered or overwhelmed or kind of just not in the moment, we want you to take a big deep breath, and on your exhalation, a long
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Your work reminds us that healing doesn't require hustle, that safety is not a reward, and that when the nervous system is honored, life begins to soften. Everyone out there, thank you for joining us for this episode of Neuroalchemy. If today's conversation resonated with you, let it land gently. You don't need to do more. You don't need to become someone else. Sometimes healing begins by letting the body know it's finally safe to stop bracing. You can learn more about Ash's work through the links that you can find in the show notes. And if you'd like to explore more science and soul conversations like this, you can find additional episodes and resources at neurosynergyhealth.com. If you heard something today that you think would benefit a friend, a family member, a coworker, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share this episode. That is how these conversations travel to the ears that need to hear them the most. I'm Dr. Sarah Young, and until next time, may you honor your body, trust your timing, and continue becoming. Bye for now.